And start the stream on YouTube. Mark?
Okay, it's live.
Thanks. It's according to my computer, it's 1:59. We're gonna give another 3 minutes before, 2 minutes before we get started. Okay, we got Dave Rothbard. Okay.
Do you need Dave Ono moved over?
Yeah, please.
Mike Kraus?
Yeah, some of the staff, yeah, just unmute if they like to talk, but they probably just want to be in the background talk, but yeah. Levine, there you are. Okay,
Hey,
we got a good attendance of the SRC members, so.
I think we like the location you're holding it at, Al.
Pardon me?
I think we like the location you are holding it at, is why you have good attendance.
Well, it's virtual location, so like we're all safe.
Yes.
Thank you. Although I
Yeah,
prefer to
but
be on
Wayne,
your
is it
background.
safe in Yorba Linda?
Yes, we're trying to be. Yeah. And Behemoth, she lives there too. And you have other people from AQMD that live here, I know.
A lot of
Mhm.
people, yeah.
Between Chino Hills, Diamond Bar, and Yorba Linda, quite a few of our people are impacted by that fire. So
Yep.
Hey, Al,
Yes,
let
sir.
me, I can cut in. The only I'm looking at on your website, the only presentation slides I see are dated July 22nd.
Yeah, we have not uploaded normally we upload the presentations after our meeting
Okay.
or the day of the meeting. As soon as we're done with our meeting, Bill, we upload the presentation to our website.
Okay, so I can't get ahead of you then, right?
I thought we emailed you the presentation to all the BACT SRC committee members.
If you did, I can't find it, but
I think it's embedded in
It's
the
in
invite.
Bill, it was in the calendar invite.
Yeah.
all right, well, let me look for it.
Okay. If not, Bahari, can you please send Bill Lamar the presentation? Thanks. Looks like we're almost ready to start. Looks like we've got as many of the SRC members. It's a good turnout today. Okay, well, with that, I guess it's already 2:02 according to my computer, so we'll get started right now. And Bahari, while I talk, if you like to monitor the attendees to see if we get all the SRC committee members. Well, thanks everybody for attending our third BACT SRC committee meeting of this year, and I think it's the final one of this year. I hope everybody's safe. We are, I know a lot of folks online are probably watching the fire, so we understand. And one of them is my senior engineer, Bahari. So she's home and hopefully she'll be okay. And with that, let's see, on the agenda, let's go straight into the introductions really quickly. Oh, well, before I do that, let me go down quickly the housekeeping announcements. I'll go straight down since we're on a virtual meeting. I'll go straight to the final announcement, which is in order to have a productive meeting, please present your views in a courteous and professional manner. We understand that some of you feel strongly about the issues before us. However, raised voices, profanity, or personal attacks are not helpful to the process. We believe this is the best way to encourage meaningful dialogue that includes all perspectives. Thank you. And with that, let's see. Let's go a quick attendance, introductions of the committee, and I'll just mention the committee members association, if you can just say if you're here. EPA. CARB.
Our Paul is here. I need to.
Yeah, this is Pippin Mater from the California Air Resources Board.
Hi, Pippin. I know, thanks, Pippin. I know San Diego APCD, two folks retired. Steve Moore retired, and then his replacement retired the next day. So we are trying to get somebody else to replace him from San Diego APCD. From the CEC, Bay Area AQMD, Edison, Call gas. I thought I saw.
Forgive me.
Yeah, there you go. LADWP.
This is Ben.
LA County Sanitation District.
Here.
Thanks, Dave. Orange County Sanitation District. And WISPA, Western States Petroleum Association. I know that Bridget wants, I think we got replacement, okay. The California Small Business License Alliance.
Hi, Bill Lamar here.
Okay, thank you, Bill. RadTech.
Rita Loof here.
Thanks, Rita. York Engineering.
Judy York here.
ES Engineering Services. Carl?
Oh, I'm here. Who did you call me out of?
Yeah, I think you are ES Engineering Services, right? Or did you change company?
Montrose.
Montrose, okay, there you go. Ship and Shore Environmental. Okay, thanks. Foul Weather Consulting.
Barry Rubenstein here.
Okay. Thanks, Gary. UC Riverside.
I'm here, Wayne.
UC Irvine.
Yeah, this is Vince. I'm here.
And Natural Resources, our new member to the SRC, Resources Defense Council.
Hi, David Pettit, I'm here.
Okay, welcome, David.
Thank you.
And with that, we'll get started. Tony, if you could please bring up the first slide on the presentation. Okay, great. Thank you. As I mentioned, this is the third BACT Scientific Review Committee meeting of this year, and it's our final before we move on to the our Station Resource Committee meeting and to the board, governing board meeting for approval. Next slide, please. And this is an agenda of what we're going to cover today. As of our last meeting in July 22nd, we had a 30-day public comment period, and we received several written comments. We're going to go over those comments in addition to our responses as we cover each individual category for which those comments were submitted for. We are also going to go over our proposed amendments to the guidelines that many of you already know very well by now, to both the overview, pretty much all parts of the guidelines, overview section, parts A, C, and E, which is the policy section of the BACT guidelines, part B, which is the major source layer determinations, part D, the minor source BACT determinations. We're going to go over the BACT technical assessment for biogas flares that we're committed to cover every SRC meeting, and discussion. And then we'll talk about the next steps. And with that, I'll hand it over to Bahare to take over the next slide.
Thanks, Al. My name is Bahar Farhani. Welcome to the BACT SRC meeting number 3. So at any point, if there is any concern or questions from our SRC members, please feel free to stop me and ask. Also for the member of the public, we will be happy to reply to your questions at the end of the presentation.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm sure everybody knows that to press the raise hand button, or if you're on the phone, to press *9. So go ahead, who's this?
Very quickly, this is David Rothbart.
Yes, David.
Before you proceed, you have the minutes that were sent out. I did have one quick comment if you're taking comment in the minutes.
Yes, I mean, normally we do the minutes as we agreed before online, but if you like to give us another comment, we'll take it.
One real quick one on page 12 of the minutes.
Okay.
Second paragraph that says likely to be wastewater treatment plan. Please change that to wastewater treatment plant.
Wastewater treatment. Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thanks, David.
New facility. All right. So
Thanks.
at the last, on slide number 3, at the last SRC meeting held in July, we presented proposed new BACT determinations and update to part B and D, as Al mentioned, as well as some clarification and administrative changes to make the guideline more user-friendly and also to be consistent with our amended rules and regulations. The 30-day public comment period ended on August 21st, and we received 4 comment letters. And since our last SRC meeting, we replied to written comment letters and held several meetings with stakeholders such as SoCalGas, Edison, and more. And we had some internal staff meeting. As a result, we added more clarification to the guidelines and BACT forms based on the received comments. Next slide, please. So on slide number 4, which is, we have several updates to the guidelines, including some administrative changes, and consistent with new guidelines regarding South Coast AQMD's branding, all district and ST-AQMD references in the BACT guidelines are proposed to be changed to South Coast AQMD. And in part C, policy and procedures for non-polluting facilities, table 5, we are going to update the maximum cost effectiveness criteria based on the most recent Marshall and Swift equipment index, based on the date that we are going to propose our final revision to our scientific review, to a stationary source committee. Next slide, please. Sure.
Excuse me, Bahar, before you go on, Tony, I should mention, today we just received the third quarter Marshall and Swift numbers. So instead of doing the second quarter, we're going to be proposing the third quarter Marshall numbers for the maximum cost effectiveness values. So thank you.
Thanks. On slide number 5, which is overview, under chapter 3, table 2, we added the completed name of class 1 group 2 substances, just to be consistent with the rest of the tables we have in the guidelines. So I just put the, Tony, could you please just press click for the picture to come? So it will show you the changes. The red ones, the underline is the complete names. And also in chapter 5, review of staff BACT determination, we updated the name of our 2 divisions from engineering to engineering and permitting, and public affairs to legislative public affairs media office. Next slide.
Excuse me, Bahar, we have 85 attendants. So if somebody raises their hand, Tony, if you can let us know, appreciate it.
Okay. All right, before going to part B, I will stop to see if you have any questions. So part A, proposed amendments to BACT guidelines in chapter 1 to be consistent with the requirements of rule 1325, we listed volatile organic compounds, VOC, one of the principal precursors gas, which is contribute to PM 2.5. And you see here in the table, the red part shows the addition. And we also propose to update the listing information in chapter 2, which is the how to use part B of the BACT guidelines based on the B-LAER BACT determination form, which has been used by our engineering and permitting staff when we establish a new BACT determination. So it is not something new. We're just trying to be consistent with the BACT form that we are using every day to propose the BACT determination. We did those modifications to be in line with the forms. Okay, next slide, please. Slide number 7.
Oh, Bahar, hold on a second. We have one raised hand.
Sure. Yeah, I will stop before starting part B.
Dave, can you let the individual with the raised hand, it's a number, oh, hold on, oh my God. We got 87 people that we gotta. Tony, can you allow the raised hand individual to talk?
Ending in 384.
384, yeah.
Okay.
384.
Okay, I'm in, but he's not being.
He's not, he or she's not.
Hello?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes.
Hi. Oh, sorry. This is Kendra Jukes from Southern California Edison. I'm not able to join Zoom because of our company policy, so I've
yes,
called
I
in. So I just raised my hand so I could let you know that I'm here.
Oh, Kendra, sorry about that. Yeah, that's the thing. I know some organizations that don't do Zoom. So I don't know if there's a way if you're calling on the phone to allow you to talk. So just raise your hand if you have a comment, I guess. So thank you for letting us know. Thanks. Go ahead, Bahar. Thanks.
Slide 7, please. I don't know. I cannot see the slide. Okay. All right. So in Part B, we propose to add 7 new listings as well as to update one of the existing BACT determination for one of the major polluting facilities. And for non-major polluting facilities, Part B of the guidelines, we have 3 updates and 4 new listings. We also received some input from the engineering permitting staff, and based on their comments, we are proposing some minor changes and clarification to make the Part D BACT determination table more user-friendly. Is mostly like the cosmetic changes. And the proposed changes and updates to Part B will be under Section 1, which means that it provides information on LAER or BACT determination, including technology or limits contained in the permit issued by South Coast AQMD, not from other agencies, or is not a new technology.
I'm sorry, we have Anusha. She's also a BACT SRC member. Anusha, are you unmuted? Anusha, I know you're calling in via phone.
Hello?
Hello? I guess Anusha also, her company does not allow Zoom, so she's calling us. Okay, well, we're aware that Anusha is online and hopefully we've, I think, allowed you to speak, so hope you're hearing us.
Okay.
All right, go ahead, Bahar.
So we are adding 3 categories of thermal oxidizer, including regenerative, recuperative, as well as flare. Thermal oxidizer, as you know, is a control equipment device controlling VOC emissions from different processes. So this one, the RTO, actually the facility is a supplier of metallic coated and pre-painted steel. They conduct metal coil coatings operations, and they own and operate an RTO. So the prime and finish coating vented to the RTO, and the RTO has a dual ceramic heat exchanger media with low NOx burner rated at 9.8 million BTU per hour. The minimum VOC destruction and control efficiency are both 95% during the normal operation. This is just something I want to mention because it is in the forum for additional information. But what we are doing here, we are establishing BACT for NOx and CO, not for VOC. So it has been permitted at 30 ppm NOx and 100 ppm CO on a dry basis, corrected to 3% oxygen. And the test sources conducted to show that the NOx and CO emissions from the startup burner prior to introduction of waste gas in the process stream to show the compliance with permit conditions. So the startup burners is used when starting the RTO to heat up the ceramic bed before injecting the waste gas. That's why we include burner operation only on the top, on the title, because this is an important distinction. And this facility has been source tested in 2019, and the source test results also have been approved.
Hold on, Bahari. I think Gary Rubenstein has a raised hand. Go ahead, Gary.
Sure.
Thank you, Al. This comment applies to this listing, and there's another similar listing where you're proposing to make the BACT determination just for the burner, NOx and CO, but you incidentally list the control efficiency. And I believe there's a potential for confusion that I've seen in some other similar listings where the listing is interpreted as also being a BACT listing for VOC. So I would suggest that you find some way to clarify that this is a BACT determination only for NOx and CO, and that the VOC efficiency is for information purposes only.
A good point. Actually, for VOC, you're right. We added in the next, I guess it's under section 5, not the section which determines the BACT for the table we have for the BACT determination. But this is a good point. I believe that if we kind of clarify that even on that page, I guess it's page 4, probably helps. It's like, yeah, I guess. Okay.
I don't know where you should make the clarification, but I know there has been some misunderstanding about these determinations in the past.
Yeah.
I leave it to your judgment as to how you clarify it.
Yeah, that's a good point, because the efficiency, the reason we included it is because the efficiency is part of the permit condition.
Right.
But we can include it in the part 5G, which is control technology comments. I know before there was issues when we included that in part, let's see.
I guess it's in 5G right now, if I'm right, but we may need Al to kind of clarify it too.
Yeah, that is not, I understand, yeah.
Yeah, for us that we know about the form, we know that that first table, that's NOx, CO, VOC, everything in it is the BACT determination. But yeah, Gary has a good point. If the people refer to the page 4, they think that they may be BACT.
Yeah, because I know section 3B of I'm sorry, 4B of the form titles other BACT requirements. If we were to add it there, then for sure we're saying BACT is also the efficiency.
Yeah.
But if we add it to section 5G, which is control technology comments, our interpretation is that it's just referencing it as a comment that, yeah, the permit has that control efficiency, but we are gonna go ahead and add further clarification language to make sure that there's no misunderstanding that we are also, in addition to the CO and NOx, we're establishing a VOC, which we're not. Yeah. Judy, go ahead.
Also, Al, sorry, Judy, and I apologize. I don't know how to raise my hand on electronically. Sorry, I can put my hand up.
You're a panel member, so you just unmute yourself and you can talk.
Okay, sorry. Also, where is it clarified that this is a test for NOx on using natural gas on the burner only, and not while it's combusting the off gas or, you know, the vapor recovery gas? Because I know in the past we've had confusions on that as well, and yeah.
Normally on the form, we include that information in the I think, right, Bahar, section 1L.
And I know what, Judy, you're mentioning, like for recuperative, actually, we put it in a way that it is non-process emissions, but for RTO, we put it as a burner operation only. And this is because our understanding is that this thing, it needs to have that pilot flame be on during the process. So more than that, there is no way to have the burner on. So that's why we just say burner operation only. It means that if the waste gas is coming in, the burner is not operating.
Al,
Go ahead.
Yeah, under emission information section 4B, it says burner emissions only, right underneath where the limits are. And then when you look at the control technology, the demonstration of compliance, section E, it tells you that emission limits were met during startup when only the burner is operating. There is no process gas during the startup.
Yeah, that's always, we try to make sure that is understood. And thanks, Bhaskar. And we do list it in those sections. I know some of the rules might get into that detail, but we're trying to make sure, but we welcome all these comments. So the better we communicate that information that these, we're talking about burner emissions only, the better it is. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Next slide, please. And next slide, Tony. Thank you so much. So the next category of thermal oxidizer we're proposing is recuperative thermal oxidizer, and which is not probably as common as the RTO. The facility is a manufacturer of specialty tapes and fabrics used in various industries. They operate a recuperative thermal oxidizer and 2 tower coolers. Recuperative thermal oxidizer has a shell and tube heat exchanger and employs a single low NOx burner firing natural gas. The achieving practice examples is for a coating and curing facility with ovens that are directly vented to the recuperative thermal oxidizer. We have the source test data supports the NOx limit of 30 ppm and CO limit of 250 ppm corrected to 3% oxygen for natural gas-fired burner. The equipment shall be maintained and also operate at a minimum destruction efficiency of 95% and overall VOC efficiency of 95% according to the permit. The thermal oxidizer is in operation for more than 2 years. And also for this one, we added non-process emissions on the top to show that we are not including the waste gas stream.
And again, although Bahari mentioned the destruction efficiency, this is exclusively a NOx and CO backed limit that we are proposing.
Next slide, please.
So is non-process the same as burner only? Or, I mean, I guess it's related to the prior discussion.
Right. It's just the way that we understand is the way they define it for the recuperative compared to RTO. Okay. But it's kind of the same concept, yeah. And the same for the flare, the third one.
Right, okay.
We are on slide number 9, flare or thermal oxidizer. So this control equipment is used to control vapors from marine loading operations in a terminal. In permit description, sometimes it is referred as a thermal oxidizer and sometimes as a flare, so we use them interchangeably. This facility has 2 parallel flares, burner with maximum heat release rating of 39 million BTU per hour each, and they can operate together or individually. They use natural gas to bring it up to the temperature, and then natural gas goes to the burner and it is injected to the vapor line at the duct. And besides burning natural gas as a supplemental fuel, each oxidizer collects VOC displays from the vessel during the cargo loading operations. And we have sources results confirm compliance with permit NOx and CO limit. As you can see here, the NOx limit we are proposing is 30 ppm and CO is 10 ppm. Again, corrected to 3% oxygen. And based on the permit, the operator shall maintain this equipment to achieve a minimum destruction efficiency of 95% and minimum overall control efficiency of 95% for VOC during the normal operation of the equipment. Next slide, please. We also received a comment letter from Dr. Miller. So the comments was about, it was a concern about the terminal emissions as to VOC from a light hydrocarbons or versus a heavy one like crude oil in the terminal, and if the working unit has a VOC limit. We already sent our response to all the comments and we are including it here for the rest of the folks. So actually the permit condition limits VOC emission and the facility has to meet the VOC limit regardless of the product loaded. But I just want to mention that this BACT determination is actually focusing on the NOx and CO, not VOC, but the permit actually has a condition also to limit the VOC regardless of the product.
And I should mention our response to the written comments will be included as an attachment to our board package, typical to how a rural development type board package is. So,
Al, I have a question on the
yes, Bill.
permit condition limits for VOCs. Is that a set limit, or does that is that determined permit by permit?
Well, it depends. I would let the permitting engineering folks answer this, but let me give it a first go at it. I think it varies. The VOC, depending on what process you're talking about, what process is being permitted, what you're venting, I believe it varies. Bhaskar, you guys want to go ahead and comment on this? So I don't think there's a one size fits all as far as a VOC limit for different processes.
Yeah, and it depends on the commodity too, how to calculate the emission from that to meet the limit.
Okay, because I think at one time you all were issuing permits at 68 pounds, I think, and that seemed to be across the board, but apparently there's been some sort of a change over time.
Bhaskar, you have a?
I'd rather have somebody from the codings team have answer that. But yeah, I mean, we were permitting it at one level, but then, it's going from our offset bank. So I think we have been looking at what the needs are when we are permitting those.
Well, that's certainly more equitable. So I'm not complaining. I just wanted some clarity. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's a case by case, really. I think Wayne Miller, you have a.
Yes, thank you for the answer. I just wanted to make clear that a light hydrocarbon, heavy hydrocarbon were extremes, but sometimes the petroleum companies will offload on the ship's distillate. So it could be, it's usually diesel fuel, not jet fuel, but it could be either one. It could be jet. And so there are in-betweens. I just want to make that clear. Those were the extremes. Thank you for answering.
Okay.
Okay, next slide, please. So now we are on slide number 11. This is a process heater for non-refinery using thermal fluid heater, firing natural gas. So we're proposing to add this determination, and we have two examples of achieving practice with source test results. So they are both in compliance with NOx limit of 9 ppm and CO limit of 100. And one of the facilities produces asphalt roofing shingles and operates a thermal fluid heater circulating hot oil through hollow agitators in a closed mixing vessel, kind of heat of limestone filler, which is blended with asphalt prior to application on shingles. And one of the heaters is 4.5 million BTU per hour, and the other one is at 10 million BTU per hour, both equipped with low NOx burners. Next, please. And slide 12. We are adding a new stationary prime IC engines, rich burn, to the listing. These engines were actually originally permitted as emergency generators, but usage during the flag warning events and the PSPS event generated the need for additional hours of operation above the 200 hours per year limited hours, the operation time. So the engine were permitted as prime engines, which triggered the rule 1110.2 for electric generation emission standards. And the PC, a permit to construct for these prime engines, were issued in 2015, and they are rated at, there are 5 of them. We mentioned, include 2 of them in this listing. One is at 174 and the other one is 385 brake horsepower. And these are, as I mentioned, non-emergency electrical generators with NSCR. And we have source test results show they are in compliance with rule 1110.2 with NOx limit of 0.07 and the VOC of 0.1 and CO 0.2 pounds per megawatt hour. And the source test also, as I said, confirmed the limits, and they're all corrected to 15% oxygen on a dry basis. And according to, for this listing, actually, we received a comment letter, and we had meetings, discussion with our internal staff and also SoCal Gas. So next slide, please.
Bahari?
Sure, go ahead, please.
Yeah, maybe you transposed a number, or maybe you didn't. You said IC engines 174 and 385. Did you mean 147?
Yes, sorry, 147.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for correction. Okay, so on the comments, we received one comment letter actually, but including several concern. So one of them was about, mostly was about all the determination form we had, and they want us, SoCalGas want us to revise to just kind of reflecting the right information and make, model, and the application of the unit. So under section 1, equipment information, they want us to revise the function description. And the underline I'm showing is kind of the correction we did, because before we put it like kind of general, we said there is a gas production, but it seems not, is no gas production at SoCal Gas natural gas storage facilities. And electricity generated by this engine-driven generator is supplied to a number of pieces of equipment, but not exclusively to compressors. In the previous form, the draft form we had, we just mentioned compressors, but they revised it to just mention that is more than the compressor. There are different pieces of equipment. Next slide, please. The next comment that we received is the equipment information against section 1 modify the name of the Ticogen system. So we just modified the name and brand of the system to be consistent with what SoCal Gas they have in their record.
Bahari, I think Carl Laney has a question, comment.
Go ahead, Carl.
Carl?
Yeah, I'm just curious on all of the prime natural gas engines that you've researched. Don't disagree with the standards that are being referenced here. I am curious to understand, though, in the research that you did you take a look closely at the history of weekly, monthly monitoring on the small engines, and were you able to see a difference in compliance performance relative to these standards versus relative to the older legacy engine standards?
No, Carl, you're talking about the requirements under Rule 1110.2 for record keeping and maintenance?
For monitoring.
Monitoring, yes. Yes, we looked at that. And in fact, we're going to be looking at it again. Not only we're looking at source test results or SEMS if applicable, but also we'll be looking at the weekly report monitoring requirements under Rule 1110.2. And I believe 1110.2 allows that if they are in compliance for 2 or 3 weeks in a row, they can move on to longer periods of monitoring. So we'll be looking at that, yes.
Okay. I think one of the things I would be curious about is performance to these standards equal to or as successful as performance to the legacy standards, just to see how close to the bone we're cutting the technology as we're looking at the DG standards.
Yeah, and you're right. And back when I worked on Rule 1110.2, this is one of the changes we did. We because there was issues that you recall with compliance of these engines, so we added the additional monitoring requirements to ensure that these engines stay in compliance. As you recall, also back then we did unannounced visits. A lot of these engines were, of course, in compliance when you did a source test, but then a week or less than a week later, they would go off their settings and would exceed the emissions. But yeah, that's a good point. We're looking at all the supporting documentation to ensure that compliance is being achieved.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Next slide, please.
I had a question, Al, but
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I raised my hand back on 12.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, sorry.
So just, it's a question about what this category is. So it's an IC engine, doesn't say how it's fueled. It's a certain size. it's non-emergency. So, and it's exempt from the number of hours per, and it doesn't have SCR. So it's exempt from the normal number of hours that this IC engine can run to make electrons. Is that what this category is?
Yeah, the category, Wayne, this is a category for a non-emergency stationary engine. When you have an engine that is non-emergency, it's not limited to the traditional 200 hours of operation per year. And it's really a prime engine. So it can operate more, full time.
Say it could be like the ones in Catalina, for example.
There you go. And when an engine goes into that area, it's subject to more stringent limits that are in Rule 11.10.2.
And how do these limits here, I understand these limits because they're more traditional, pounds per, so many units of electric powered. And so how do they line up with the tier? In other words, if these engines were covered by the EPA CARB tiers, for emissions, I know you're shaking your head, but how do they line up? I'm just curious.
These limits are a lot more stringent.
These are more stringent.
Yes.
Okay,
A diesel tier 3 or tier 4 engine would not comply with these limits of 11.10.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. I'll take my hand down.
Yeah, thanks.
And Dr. Miller, just about the fuel you mentioned, it is we include the natural gas in the BACT form, so it is specified in the form.
That was going to be my question. Is this is just applicable for natural gas, and that answers that question. Thank you.
That's correct. Yes.
This is Pippin from CARB. I just had a quick question about, this is super interesting, this particular one to me. And I guess that this got transferred from emergency backup to non-emergency as it relates to the PSPS events. Is that right?
Yeah, that was one of the reasoning for it. And this engine is not a traditional lean burn engine that would use an NSCR. This is a rich burn engine that uses a three-way catalyst.
Cool. And I guess did it required retrofitting when it transitioned from emergency to non-emergency?
Yes.
Neat. Great. Thank you.
Yeah, Al, this is Dan McGivney with SoCal Gas. I just want to add so people understand these engines, we weren't really having PSPS events as we're having today. Back then, this occurred several years ago when we had, there were fires similar to what there are today, and so there are what people call red flag warnings, which are high wind warnings that could, where you could have fires, and there are electrical lines on our facility. So in order to avoid during these red flag warnings, we would shut those distribution systems down and we would have to rely on the emergency engines. And so the district worked with us for a couple of years to allow us more, to use more of those hours for these emergencies, because they're in the district's purview. Maybe they weren't quite, normal emergency because there wasn't no, shutdown or fire yet or kind of something like that. But over the 2 or 3 years that we did it, the district evaluated it was just too many hours of operation. So they requested us to permit those as permanent engines. And so these were retrofitted a number of years ago. They probably have the dates in those back determinations that were part of that you can link to, but these really didn't have the same PSPS events that we're dealing with today, but it had similar events where there was the chance of fires, and fires could spread otherwise, and they were from electrical lines sparking or something. So we basically took the measures to retrofit these engines so that they could operate full time. We still only operate them. They probably operate less than 50 hours a year, somewhere certainly less than 100 hours in a year. But we had to do what we had to do in order to maintain that use.
Yeah, thanks for the explanation, Dan. And apparently, you folks are the ones that SoCal Gas took it upon themselves to shut down the power lines, right?
Yes, we did that. Yeah.
You were ahead of the PSPS.
Yeah, and we're the gas company, right? So we're not Edison or something. We don't own any lines that are, somewhere else. Just distribution, internal distribution that's on our facility. We shut those down. And whenever there's like a red flag warning, I think there was one yesterday or something like that. So that's the primary reason that we have it there. It's just for on-site and off-site safety, fire safety and stuff. So And I think they're going to get to it here in one of the next couple slides, but these small engines, and they are pretty small engines, were very difficult to meet these limits, you know, because of the limited operation and the length of operation. So there's permanent load banks on each of these engines so that we can generate the heat and everything to actually make these things meet emissions while they're operating. So a typical engine wouldn't, even an electrical generation engine would typically not, it would be cost prohibitive for someone to do one of these installations if you were just going to try and do minimal, you know, power gen. Usually you do full-time power gen and you wouldn't need these load banks and such. So this is what I would say a very rare type of installation.
And thanks, Dan. And we took your comments, and we are, as you'll see in the next slides, we are including them in the determination forms.
Yeah, I noted, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
All right. So on slide, go ahead.
Al, I had one. This is when I had one other comment.
Yes,
the water companies are installing, because of the PSPS generators, as you know, but they're not natural gas, because if we want to have a system that can run 24 hours, we have to use diesel just because of the energy efficiency. Not to pick on the gas company, but just to, you know, look at the cost of fuel storage, which is what we do when we make that decision. So I'm just, and then we do run them. You know, obviously, if we don't have power, we have to move water so the firemen have the resource they need. And anyways, I'll talk to you offline, but
yeah, please, thank you.
I'll make it clear it's not natural gas. You know, it's just the problem for the 24 hours that we're trying to fuel them for.
We'll be sure also to get our permitting folks to join us.
And just to clear too, these engines, even as emergency engines, were always natural gas. I mean, we have natural gas on site, so we just, that's what we use. So
okay, thanks.
Our problem, Dan, is storing it for 24 hours.
No, I understand. And typically I've been at previous employers, had natural gas emergency engines, you know, in around a megawatt in size on several of them. And they were natural gas lean burns, and they had propane storage, on-site storage tanks so if there was an interruption in the natural gas supply, they could operate on propane. But historically, there's been no, and this is decades long historically, there hasn't been any interruptions of the gas supply during things like fires or earthquakes and things like that. So they're relatively secure.
We still have natural gas one, Dan, just so you know that, to back up our pumps.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. On slide number 15, section 5, modify the so we modified the description to clarify actually kind of the brand and model of the technology that SoCalGas we are using. So the underlined are mostly what we change or modify to be consistent with the comment letter we received. And on slide number 16, which is the last part of the comments on this determination. So in section 5, control technology, we modified the comment section, and is like kind of what Dan just mentioned, that we added the old system was replaced by the Tecogen ultra emission retrofit kit. This system is retrofitted with an electrical load bank. Catalyst life has been short due to system back pressure, condensation, and high exhaust temperatures to kind of show and reflect the actual condition and the type of operations that this IC engine has. Next slide, please. This one is the category, the duct burner, which is in the refinery. And currently there is no BACT determination in Part B for this category. So we are looking to bring some guidance to duct burner sulfur emissions. And this is running on refinery fuel gas, and it is used for generating additional steam as part of the heat recovery system generator in a cogen unit. And since the duct burner exhaust gas is diluted by the exhaust gas from the gas turbine, and the fuel directed to the burner must comply with the fuel gas H2S limits, So we actually include the two limits for the total reduced sulfur based on the permit limits that we have, the condition we have in the limit. And we have one achieved in practice example with more than 6 months supporting SEMS data. So we look at that 6 months of the continuous emission monitoring data from this unit. And those numbers confirm that this the permit limit, which is established at 40 ppm rolling 1 hour average and 30 ppm rolling 24 average period, they are actually effective. And in terms of SEMS performance, because it was a question we had last time, so we look at that, and then there is a requirement for SEMS to be operated, maintained, and calibrated according to the applicable requirements of rules. And there is a RADA requirements in addition to that. Also, SEMS are certified, and there is a procedure to ensure that SEMS generates, collects, and actually reports valid data, which is precise and accurate.
Bahar, excuse me, Joe Howard, Joseph, I believe we have a raised hand. Joe Howard?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Thanks, Alfonso.
Thank
I guess my question is fairly simple. So the limit is on fuel sulfur content verified by a CEM. So I assume someone's done some calculations in between, since the CEM's not measuring fuel, or is this not a CEM on the stack, but it is a fuel sulfur monitor?
That's exactly what it is. Not on the stack.
Yeah.
You might
And
want
the
to call it
accurate-
something other than a CEM, because it's not measuring emissions.
Okay.
Okay.
And actually, we had some comments kind of in line with your question, Howard. So I don't know if they answer your question or not. So let's, if you're
We're
okay,
gonna
let's,
add that clarification.
yeah. And also,
Okay.
let's go to the next slide, because we received
Sorry.
again a couple of comments. Oh,
We
we
have
have
also,
another raised hand, right?
Yeah, Greg Bush. Go ahead, Greg.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, thanks. I may be preempting some of these questions here, but I thought it was worth pointing out, I don't have intimate details of this particular fuel gas stream, but it is worth pointing out that, within a refinery, you typically do have multiple sections of fuel gas with various levels of fuel gas treatment. So I think it's important to, frame this, back determination up in the context of a total refinery-wide fuel gas system and what optionality you have within each individual fuel gas system. So like I said, I don't have intimate details about this particular system, but I just want to be careful about applying a BACT for a very specific fuel gas treatment stream that may not be broadly applicable to a refinery-wide fuel gas system. Just because in a particular stream, in say a series of 5 different fuel gas treatment systems, you could have optionality to dilute with natural gas. You could have optionality to divert high sulfur streams to somewhere else in your refinery where you have better sulfur recovery. So I just want to be really careful about how we apply this specific BACT determination to, I guess I would call it a subsection of a refinery-wide fuel gas treatment system.
Yeah, good point, Greg. And this layer or determination or BACT is really applicable to the equipment, which is the duct burner. We don't go into the area of refinery wide. That's left for the rule development to do that. This is for the case specific of this duct burner.
Sure. I guess one other way I'd potentially frame it, and obviously I'm speaking through the lens of the potential 1109.1 rulemaking that we're working through right now.
Yes.
Is that so? And I'm just thinking hypothetically, if we have kind of a standalone BACT determination for a specific, any duct burner that exists within a refinery fuel gas system, BACT for that may preempt BACT for the rest of the refinery fuel gas system. So I guess is the proposition that I'm supposed to preferentially treat anything that a fuel gas burner exists on within my refinery fuel gas system, or should I treat the fuel gas system as a whole? Because like I say, we have, we may not have a BACT determination for another process unit, a heater or a boiler on a refinery fuel gas stream. So I guess I'm just wondering how this fits into the total picture of refinery-wide fuel gas, knowing that the duct burner may or may not exist on its own section of that refinery fuel gas system.
Yes, thanks for your comment. This is something that our engineering division brought to our attention. And as an achieved in practice permitted equipment with that limit, we have moved forward with it and proposing to move forward with it. But I see your concern, and we're going to meet again with our engineering and try to further clarify this layer determination.
Sure, I think that would help a lot. And maybe just another way to frame it, I'm trying to say the same thing in a couple different ways, is I feel like this may be less dependent on the duct burner itself and more dependent on the refinery fuel gas system configuration, if that makes sense.
Thanks. We have Sean Chu with his raised hand.
Yes, so maybe if you could clarify duct burner, you could clarify like duct burner of cogen unit or something like that. So folks know that we are talking about the duct burner for the cogen.
And it's for the steam reformer, or I guess for the
cogeneration unit.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It is
That's for the cogeneration unit.
I think we specified that on the form.
It is in the form. It is the cogeneration unit, and in the, yeah, you're right, Sean. So in the first page, we actually determined that we show that this is for the cogen unit, the combined cycle. And I believe the details are there.
Yes.
Okay.
Make sure to include that information.
Yeah, and usually when we are doing the BACT determination or permitting staff, they are reading the, they are going through the whole form. They're not looking on the title. And because BACT is case specific, they're trying to go through the details to make sure that this one applies or not just based on the title, which says probably duct burner refinery fuel gas.
It is connected to the heat recovery steam generator of that unit.
Okay.
Thanks. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Al, quick question pertaining to how compliance is demonstrated. So as far as this emissions monitoring or inline monitoring system, at least my facilities for digester gas, we've had a lot of problems with accuracy of these kind of inline meters, and just wanted to ask as far as how we're verifying that these meters are accurate.
Well, I believe, go ahead, Bahar.
So are you asking about SEMS, David? The SEMS?
As far as when you say this is SEMS for the fuel, whatever you want to call it, you have a monitoring system you're saying is verifying compliance. I just want to make sure I understand, how are we making sure that that monitoring system is accurate?
Our permitting folks are online, and we lost the slide sharing.
Slide. So let me just what I know, and then maybe the source system people, they can answer. So the SEMS that they have actually, if this is a new SEMS, definitely it should be certified with the source system people. And then after that, it depends on the type of SEMS or emissions. Usually we have some sort of the frequently, after we certify them, we check them. Like sometimes it's every other year, or mostly if it is the RADA, it should be every year.
So this is literally a SEMS on a fuel.
No, if I might, Bahar, I think this has been confusing all along. This was the nature of one of my comments, and it's the same comment that Joe made. The way you're describing it, Bahar, it's not a continuous emissions monitoring system. And I think that acronym is confusing people. It's a process monitoring system. It is, as you say, it's a TRS monitoring system, but that's not the same as a continuous emissions monitoring system, which means something different. So you might choose a different acronym.
Bahari, can I add something on this?
Go ahead, Dipankar.
Alan, Bahari, can I add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
This is Dipankar Sarkar with the source testing group at the South Coast AQMD. It is correct. It is not directly measuring emissions. And that's what also David was referring to. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're coming in and out.
Hello?
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
we can hear you.
Can hear.
Go ahead, Dipankar.
Oh, okay, you can hear me, right?
Yes.
Well, what I'm saying is, okay, it is not actually an emissions monitoring system, but what this system does, as Bahare was pointing out, is it continuously measures, not continuously, maybe every 10 minutes or 15 minutes, using a gas chromatograph and a sulfur chemiluminescent detector, the TRS or the sulfur content in the refinery gas. Now what happens is in some cases, if the limit under reclaim or rule 218, say for example, is an SO2 emissions, then the computer system now takes the total sulfur and converts it into SO2 and then turns it into SO2 emissions. So the total sulfur monitor in this case is a part of the CEM, but in a way it is also correct that the TRS system is not directly measuring emissions, but it leads towards measuring SO2, determining SO2 emissions in terms of pounds per hour, some mass emissions like that.
So I guess back to Gary's comment. So this is, it's monitoring the gas, the refinery gas flow into the burner, into the duct burner, which is, as you said, Dipankar, it measures the concentration every 10 minutes. So back to what Gary mentioned, is it better to call it
like
or a monitor?
Okay, so the name.
See what happens if you look at a SIM systems, like say, for example, like David was referring to fuel meters. When we say SIMs, that's continuous emission monitoring systems for NOx and for SO2, this is a part of the SIMs. The TRS monitor in this case, which is a GCSCD, and also the fuel meter, which is required to measure mass emissions in terms of pounds per hour, is a component, is a part of the overall CEMS SIMs.
Okay.
So in other words, this is a calibrated meter
So,
that has validated data saying the results are accurate.
I guess that's
yes,
probably a better way.
It will have a fuel flow meter. There are two ways of measuring stack flow rate, David, as you know. One is to measure fuel flow rate, and knowing the composition of the fuel, you can convert that into stack flow by combustion. The other one is to measure stack flow directly in the stack using ultrasonic or a Peter tube. So now this fuel flow meter is also, you're correct, it is a part of the SIMS along with the TRS monitor.
So
and the fuel meter is talking about radars. They have to do radars every so often, once every 6 months, once every year.
So Dipankar, it would be fair to describe this as a calibrated monitoring system, not quote a SIMS?
Maybe
I think
it sounds like it's semi-continuous.
Yeah, and at the risk of writing language by committee in a venue like this, I think the main concept we all understand, which is that you've got a process monitor, which is measuring the TRS compounds on a semi-continuous basis. It's part of a calculation system that calculates SO2 emissions. And it's probably appropriate to refer to the entire system as a CEMS, even though it's not a traditional one where you're actually directly measuring the emissions.
Okay.
And I think just some kind of clarification would be helpful.
Got it. Thank you. We'll do that.
I mean, just out of reference, that's the way we measure the emissions on ships. We measure the sulfur in the feed oil, crude oil, bunker oil, and then that's how we calculate the SO2. We don't measure SO2, we calculate it.
Yeah. Okay. We'll make sure that
that's correct, Wayne. Yeah, that's
SIMS abbreviation has the E for emissions, and we're not measuring emissions. We're measuring the fuel. Okay. Thank you. Greg Bush has his hand up.
Yeah, one more thing, just not to belabor the point. I get the sensitivity around SIMS. So SIMS is obviously a defined term that means a certain thing. It comes with a specific set of QA/QC criteria. If we're looking at aligning language, I mean, I would probably defer to federal standards. So I mean, NSPS-JA has an example of both SIMS and CMS and how they're treated a little bit differently. So like I said, I don't want to belabor the point, but it seems like there's a bit of a split on SIMS versus CMS, and which is defined, which comes with a specific set of QA/QC criteria, and which is slightly looser.
And just to pile on here, Yeah, just to pile on here, I think CMS or CPMS for continued process monitoring systems are both accepted alternatives that would define what you're doing here.
Got it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right. So let's go to the comments. Kind of, some of them, they're actually what we just discussed, but let's just quickly go over the whole thing. So
We're at the I'm sorry, we're in the middle of, we got 1 more hour to go, so.
Yeah. So clarify what is being established as BACT. So that's why we added language to the form. The BACT determination is for SOx emissions. So remove low NOx burner in section 5C, as Gary, you mentioned, which was a very good point. So we remove the NOx burner to just, it doesn't cause any confusion. And then how compliance is demonstrated by SEMS data, or whatever we are going to change this name to that to reflect the right definition from the upstream source. So the compliance show by maintaining the, I cannot say SEMS anymore. Okay.
Don't say SEMS.
This guy, I know. Maintaining the CPM or this guide to monitor the TRS compounds calculated as H2S concentration in the fuel gas. So we added in the fuel gas to define it. The next comment is if the BACT determination is based on the use of sulfur removal techniques or blending with pipeline quality natural gas, those bases should be stated. So we added a language to section 5C for clarification, and we added, this is the language we have there right now. So the total reduced sulfur limit must be measured in the refinery fuel gas before blending with natural gas for all but 72 hours per year. But please note that this 72 hours is specific to this particular facility. So we are not going to put this number. We are just allowing the facility to blend as much as they want, is their options.
They need to change the slide. They need to change the slide, Al.
Oh, sorry, I'm just
19.
We're on slide 18 or we're on slide 19?
19, sorry, I just
19,
continue the whole thing. Okay, so yeah, so we added this TRS limit to the section 5C to show that the facilities, they are allowed to blend natural gas, but again, this 72 hours is to the specific to this facility. It can be any number. We are not limiting that number. Next slide, please, slide 20. And this is the last two comments. It was not clear if the limits were for sulfur as sulfur or sulfur as H2S or sulfur as SO2 plus sulfuric acid. So since the duct burner exhaust gas is, as I said, diluted with the exhaust from the gas turbine, so the fuel directed to the duct burner must comply with the fuel gas H2S limits, because as Dipankar also mentioned, there are two ways to measure sulfur directly in the fuel gas, or measure SO2 after combustion and back calculate to total reduced sulfur. But because of diluting this exhaust with also the gas turbine exhaust, so we use the first method, measuring the sulfur directly in the fuel gas. And the last comment is H2SO4 from the exhaust contributes to PM release. So we just want to clarify that this BACT determination is for SOx emissions. So we are not looking at the PM release right now. It may affect that, but this is specific to the SOx and we specified in the BACT determination form. Any question?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for your comments. Next is, oh, thank you. And then we have a new entry for aluminum heat treating oven furnace, which is rated at 5.47 million BTU per hour. Facility is in the business of aluminum extrusion, and they have a furnace which treats billets prior to and during the extrusion process. And the billets are heated up to 970 degrees Fahrenheit, and which is, we also include that as part of the BACT, the temperature. The NOx limit is 25 ppm corrected to 3% oxygen, and as Dr. Miller asked, dry bases, I added it. There is one example of achieving practice with sources data showing compliance with the NOx limit. Next, please. Slide 22, which is the gas turbine. This is just an update. So staff is updating we propose to update this current gas turbine simple cycle category based on achieved in practice example. This is the result of a lot of meetings with the facility, with source testing, with engineering, permitting staff. This gas turbine is a peaker plant and it is permitted at 2.3 ppm NOx limit and has been operated at this limit for a couple of years. The facility, they were very cooperative to provide us with all those source test data and mostly the continuous emission monitoring data for 1 year for 2 of their units. So we are proposing to reduce current NOx limit from 2.5 to 2.3 ppm for the simple cycle natural gas turbine, and the CO limit will be 4 ppm, going down from 6 to 4 ppm. But the ammonia slip limit would be still 5 ppm. And this, again, 2.3 ppm limit is during the normal operation, not during the startup, shutdown, and maintenance periods, because again, these are the peaker units, so there are a lot of fluctuation when they're starting, and we have to filter out a lot of those startup and shutdown numbers. And the RADA test results, as well as 1 hour SEMS data, show that they are in compliance with permit limits for NOx and CO. And based on the inputs from engineering and permitting staff, and look at the SEMS and also the source test, this will be an achievable limit and the requirement for future gas turbine of this type, but just for the major sources for now.
Bahar, this is Gary. This one, it's a little confusing because the listing shows BACT limits for VOC and ammonia, as well as for NOx and CO. But the compliance demonstration section, section 6, shows the CEM results for CO and NOx, and it's left unclear as to whether there was a CEM for VOC and ammonia. I suspect there is not, or whether those were verified by compliance tests. So I'd suggest that you clarify that the VOC and ammonia values were confirmed by compliance tests rather than by CEM.
For compliance tests, okay.
Yeah, I think we listed, Gary, on the form, we listed the 3 separate tests, compliance tests for that.
Yeah.
But I don't see that you listed the compliance test results for VOC and ammonia, just for NOx and CO.
Yes, I just added NOx and CO.
Yeah, well, this is a NOx and CO layer determination.
Then we're getting back to the same confusion we had before, because you're also showing VOC and ammonia limits, and the implication is that this is also a BACT layer determination for those pollutants as well.
Got it. Yeah.
We're talking about the first table, right? The BACT determination, Gary, right? So you're saying that we are added in the first table. Okay.
In the section for emissions information table, you have all 4 listed.
Right.
Probably
Gary, the reason we listed them in addition to NOx and CO is because those were part of the permit conditions for this permit.
I understand, but this is similar to the questions I raised before, that the form is not clearly distinguishing what the BACT determination is and what other relevant information is that, for example, is other permit conditions.
So maybe we should move the VOC and ammonia limits to the section, I think is other BACT requirements.
Other additional reference data, maybe?
Yeah.
That is a good point. So we can maybe just put an
move it
asterisk and explain them.
Maybe you can move it to part D of section 4 under the comments.
Yeah, emission information comments, that would also work.
Okay.
Exactly. Okay.
And those are measured, I mean, those are source tested. There is no continuous emissions monitor for either VOC or ammonia.
Right.
Exactly. It's just CO and NOx.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Very good point.
Thank you.
Al, this is Carl. I have a district policy question, and I can't recall what the BACT guidelines currently
I'm sorry,
say.
can you repeat? You have what kind of question?
This is not about the listing itself. It's more a district BACT policy. Does the policy that the district follows still allow for people to propose an alternative equivalent limit? For example, in this case, instead of the 2.3 ppm, an equivalent pound per megawatt hour based upon the turbines that this came from.
An equivalent, in other words, instead of achieving 2.3 ppm NOx?
Are applicable to propose an equivalent pound per megawatt hour permit limit as BACT?
That would be something that would be a rule requirement that would allow that, unless there's also something that's been permitted, but normally BACT would not go to that extent in establishing that type of policy.
Well, and that's what I'm asking. I'm asking for what is listed in the other sections of the BACT guideline document, not the tables. As I recall, that was something that was by practice allowed when appropriate. And I just don't know if that's still in the guidelines.
No, I mean, that's a fine line that we walk between us establishing BACT guidelines and getting into the rule development world. And when you're talking about policy and that type of requirements, I think, I don't think it's in our guidelines that we allow that. And if it were to be allowed, it would be more of a rule policy that's established.
Okay.
Yeah, but we can talk later about this.
Okay.
So the next slide, please. If we don't have any raised hand, do we? Just okay. So these are mostly, we have actually a meeting with Edison. We received a comments letter, and then we have some, again, internal discussion about the comments we received. So one of them is they had a concern about the available public information on the units and gas turbines operating condition, as well as the proposed limits for NOx and CO. So for the first part, we added more clarification to the form to show that the proposed LAER determination is based on two peaker units of 49.8 megawatt. And also for the limits for NOx and CO, actually the compliance with permitted limits has been verified through source test and SEMS data. So that's why we added those 6 of the radar test results to the form, plus for 2 of the units, we add the results of the SEMS information that they're in compliance. And that's all about it. And the next slide, please. We also
hold on. We have a Sean too with the raised hand.
Sure. Go ahead, Sean. Is he unmuted? Sean?
Yeah, yes, yeah, thank you. I have a question. The source test data that you mentioned in your slides, are those the initial performance test, or
No.
those are the periodic tests?
Those are the periodic tests. So we actually asked for 3 years of the, 3 different radar tests, 2018, 19, and 2020, to make sure that they're the annual radar test data.
What about the ammonia slip test? And
the ammonia
because what I'm trying to say is, when we first submit a permit application, then we do an initial performance test. When the catalyst is fresh, it's easy to meet the low NOx limit and a low ammonia slip limit. But the efficiency of the SCR decreases over time. So let's say at the end of the catalyst life, would that unit still meet the NOx limit and the 5 ppm ammonia slip limit? So that is something that,
That's where the maintenance comes in, Sean. That's where the maintenance of the system comes in, that they monitor the performance of the catalyst. At what point they need to replace the catalyst, or maybe do some maintenance on the urea injection.
No, typically the catalyst, in order to change out the catalyst, the unit has to be shut down
So,
because they have to go inside and change out the new catalyst. So that requires unit shut down, and that is very costly. So I just want to make sure that the limits that you have in BACT applies for the duration of the life of the catalyst, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, or whatever, 6 years. And not just based on the initial performance test.
right,
No,
Sean, thanks.
Al, if that's
Hold on,
the-
Wayne, let Bhaskar go ahead.
Oh,
I mean, that's exactly the reason why we include the ammonia testing. Typically, it is annual, just to make sure that, the ammonia slip is not increasing, because as the catalyst, gets older, you lose some activity. But we want to maintain those limits, the 2.5 ppm NOx and 5 ppm ammonia both. So both, NOx is being continuously measured, and ammonia is being tested yearly. And hopefully that'll change soon once we have the ammonia SIM certification in place, where we can have continuous ammonia monitoring also.
Thanks. Wayne, go ahead.
no, I was just going to agree with him. I think I know who those units belong to, and I know that they have RADA tests at the appropriate frequency, and it includes the ammonia. I mean, I know someone that has 4 of those units, and I've seen data for 2 of them, very similar to this. So I don't know who these are exactly, but I know that they get the ammonia tested, and they do change the catalyst, ammonia catalyst at appropriate time. But they're peakers, so they can be shut down. Just to the other point that Sean, they're usually shut down, and they just come up as needed. But they do measure ammonia too, and they do change out the catalyst to maintain, as Bhaskar said, the permitted limit.
Okay, Gary, question?
Yeah, I just want to add that, the effect of this change in the BACT level will be to shorten catalyst life. It's always a trade-off between NOx and ammonia slip. You always start off with, I think as Sean mentioned, quite a comfortable compliance margin to allow for catalyst decay over time. There's no question but that 2.3 ppm NOx and 5 ppm ammonia is technically feasible, but the practical effect of that is you will require more frequent catalyst replacement.
Yeah.
And that is correct. That is correct in this case too.
All right, thank you. Let's think with that. And we met with Edison, and we explained that this is a major source determination, is not going to apply to minor sources. So.
All right. And the next slide, which is the last comment for this category. Slide 24. Also, Edison wants us to provide additional information on the units as well as source test results. So section 5 includes detailed information on the gas turbine and the SCR control system. And about the source test results, as I mentioned, we added the 3 most recent RADA test results with the exact date and the numbers for the NOx and CO limits. And we add those to section 6 of the BACT determination. Also, we included the result of SEM. We mentioned the SEMS data we used for the period of 1 year, which shows those units there in compliance with the permit limit. Next slide.
Yeah, I guess I'll take it from here then.
Sure.
The next few slides, right? We got about 40 minutes to go. So let's see, these are determinations that we went over before. This one is one we received from, we became aware of from Santa Barbara APCD. We currently already have a fermentation beer and wine BACT determination in our Part D minor source. But the one we have right now is for open systems. This is for closed tanks. And since it's a new determination, we are including it here. We did a cost effectiveness evaluation, which is included as part of the package. And the source testing, which includes monitoring the slurry from the water scrubber or the condensate from the chiller, is what is used to establish the overall control efficiency. So the next slide. Real quickly, in January of 2019, when we went to our Station Resource Committee to present at that time, the proposed amendments to the guidelines. One of the things that we presented was a letter we received regarding the use of UV-EV technology for categories. And the Station Resource Committee directed staff to look into the availability of some of the technologies and applications that we received, we were made aware of by RadTech's comment letter, in addition to look at the cost and potential for establishing BACT. In the summer of that year, we conducted several site visits to facilities listed in RadTech's comment letter and other printing facilities using ultraviolet inks and coatings. Next slide. The facilities that we looked at was the first two are the facilities that were outlined in RadTech's letter. It was a flat glass facility out of Compton. They do silk screening using exclusively UV coatings, UV inks for mirrors. And the other one was a wood coating facility, XL cabinets in Corona. And we also went out to look at paper facilities that use UV inks and coatings for labels, packaging, and so forth. We talked to all these facilities and to try to gather information. And what we learned is that UV-EV is being used. It's specific to the type of printing and or the type of coating that's being done. And is for the most part, customer-driven demand. If a customer requests that UV coatings be used on their products, that's what the facility would use. One of the advantages of UV-EV coatings is durability and increased production due to the quick drying times. However, it does come with a higher cost. It is low VOC. It is with a higher cost. We tried to obtain cost data. It was difficult to acquire that information. But overall, based on our visits, we realized that UV-EV is being used out there. We like to, is a technology we like to acknowledge that is out there, is being used. It's not for everything out there. So as long as the technology, it can be used as a method to comply with BACT and is rule compliant with the applicable rule, is something that we're proposing to add to our guidelines. As a method of compliance with BACT. Not that we're gonna say everybody who does wood coatings has to use UV or EV coatings, but it's a alternate method to complying with BACT. Next slide.
Al?
Yes, go ahead, Rita.
Yes, so if I can comment on the high cost, and I appreciate the explanation and thank you for providing that clarification because, you know, that's important to note that it doesn't mean that everybody will be mandated to use UV or EV technology, but rather it's an option. But just to, you know, go back to the issue of cost, because we do get that. The concern with the higher cost, and indeed there's a capital investment involved with the curing equipment, and also on a cost per gallon basis, our coatings, generally speaking, are more expensive than the conventional solvent-based coating. But then when you compare it on a mileage basis, like how much mileage are you getting out of the coating? Because we're 100%, almost 100% solids, whatever we're putting down on the substrate is staying on the substrate versus something that where you have 50% of the coating evaporating, for example. So we become competitive when those, you know, numbers are looked at in terms of how much mileage, how many square feet can you coat? And then, you know, we become competitive at that point. But this is one of the reasons there's definitely a capital investment for people to go to UV and EV technology. That's one of the reasons we advocate for incentives for businesses to, you know, help them along that journey. Thank you.
Thank you. And it is working. I mean, the companies we visited, they're staying in business. They are using the UV coatings and they're happy with it. Their customers are happy. So it is a technology that's being achieved in practice. So we want to acknowledge that technology through our listings. Thank you. And here's the first one is for glass screen printing. This is a facility in Compton that has a carousel where they screen print, as you can see by the photo there, they screen print the glass mirrors with UV coatings. Our recommendation is to include compliance with Rule 1145 or use of 1145 compliant UV or water-based coatings. And the safety data sheets that we reviewed do, as we've talked about, have compliant and very low VOC content. Next slide. Similar to the spray booth facility there in Corona, they have an automated system that on a conveyor belt sprays the flat cabinet parts, and has been in business for many years using UV coatings. It works for them. It's something that they like, their customers like, and it complies with our rules. Similarly, we're using that as a method of compliance with BACT, the use of UV, EV, or water-based coatings. Next slide. This is a determination that came to our attention from our engineering folks. This is as many of you know, it's the Fender facility out in Corona where they manufacture their guitars. They installed a regenerative thermal oxidizer that has achieved 30 ppm NOx and 400 ppm CO limits. We went to visit the facility. It's source tests shown compliance with the emission limits and the permit, and the cost effectiveness information that we established shows that it is cost effective in accordance with our BACT guidelines. Next slide. This slide here, we are just pretty much updating for consistency several categories. First, the flare for that complies with the existing rule 1118.1 for NOx, CO, and VOC. And this includes for landfill gas, organic gas, and we're making sure that it is as the rule applies to minor and major sources. For fish reduction and coffee roasting, this is something that we identified that really a fish reduction cooker and a coffee roaster, in accordance with Rule 1147, these are considered ovens, and 1147 does not apply to these two categories. So we are, to be consistent with the rule, are removing the NOx requirement that was there before to correct it.
Now, really quickly on the coffee roaster, did you intend then to leave a footnote cross-referencing a NOx requirement from a thermal oxidizer?
Yeah, that was just for information purposes. Most of the time when a coffee roaster needs to be controlled for emissions, if the use of a thermal oxidizer is used, we put it there as a form of information to make sure that they realize, okay, if a not to say that a thermal oxidizer is backed for coffee roasting, because we're not including that, but in case a thermal oxidizer is being used to control emissions, that those are the NOx limits and CO limits.
I would just suggest then modifying that footnote to say for NOx requirements related to the thermal oxidizer, comma, please refer to.
Okay.
Just read it, it suggested to me that you wanted somebody to look at the thermal oxidizer's BACT determination for NOx emissions from a coffee roaster. And I knew that was not your intent.
Great, thank you. We'll add that. Thank you. Okay, next slide. Here we go, same thing, just further expanding what I just mentioned in that footnote. We're gonna add that clarification. For the flare, we're adding the compliance at 1118.1, and for the gas turbine, to be consistent with the boiler listing where we include with add-on controls for ammonia slip, we're adding that additional language to be consistent again with the ammonia slip that it relates to the add-on controls. Next slide. And I think, is this Bahar's slide or my slide?
This is mine.
Oh, there you go. I'm sorry. I took one of your slides. Sorry.
That's okay. All right. So on this one, again, like these are just some cosmetic changes to Part D BACT determination. So for IC engines, actually, I have to explain that before I added the different date here. I said that we are going to change the date, which was rule amended. And then to be consistent with the guideline, I changed that language. And right now, instead of changing the date down below the rule 1469, we are going to add the revision number 1, which may kind of, I don't know, accidentally maybe it wasn't in this page for portable category. So we are going to add revision number 1 on the top of the page to be consistent with the rest of the IC engines. And as you, I guess it's not here. No, I didn't put the table here. And then show it in front of the BACT determination for IC engines to show that this change happened in revision number 1 back in 2003. And then for open process tanks, chemical milling, etching, and plating. Chemical milling tanks and chrome plating processes are both performed in open tanks. So staff is proposing to create a new category titled open process tanks, chemical milling, etching, and plating, and then move the existing chemical milling tanks and also the chrome plating to this category. And also we are proposing to remove chrome from the title to generalize this application and facilitate the process of listing other plating operation under different subcategories in the future. And more than that, because the add-on air pollution control device or use of certified chemical fume suppressants are listed in table 1 of rule 1469, we are going to update PM10 BACT requirement, as you see in this box for PM10, by changing packet scrubber and mist suppressant requirements to compliance with rule 1469, because the table in the rule already has all of those requirements. Under polyester resin operations, because polyester resins or fiberglass, yeah, same slide, operations are used interchangeably to refer to the same type of operations. So we are merging the 2 existing categories, polyester resin operations, molding and casting, and fiberglass operation categories to 1 category titled polyester resin operations. And it is also some sort of clarification, and we are not making it more stringent, and the goal is to make it consistent with industry terminology and other rule language like rule 1162. Next slide, please, 34. So going back to open process tanks, we received a comment about PFAS, and if the concern was if we are looking at the release of PFAS as part of the BACT, and the answer is that at this time we're not addressing PFAS containing chemical fume suppressant besides what is currently allowed in the applicable rules. And I don't know, the rule people, they're working in this issue and probably with the future recommendation button, but right now we are not touching this part in the BACT determination. We don't have any BACT determination for PFAS.
Al, the reason I raised that was because I think the state of New Hampshire did, and I gave you a contact there, as I recall, it was someplace back east. I think it's New Hampshire. Some of those states are very actively controlling any PFAS sources, you know.
Right. And actually, after talking to you, Dr. Miller, we contacted our rule staff too. And as you know, that in rule 1469, sorry, it addresses PFAS. And during the rulemaking last year, the staff committed to conduct some additional study on the use of PFAS fume suppressant. But it seems that at this point, we are not proposing any new thing. They're still working on that topic.
That's fine. I just wanted to give you the contact in I think it was the state of New Hampshire that was looking to do that rule. That was my main intent.
Thank you for looking into that. Thank you.
Okay. Next slide, please, 35. This is about, I don't know, okay. It's about powder coating booth. So we are proposing to correct the throughput limit from equal or greater than 37 pounds per day to greater than 37 pounds per day to be consistent with the internal policy, which was based on a cost effectiveness evaluation for powder coating operations. And also the table here, the red box here shows that this is the old language that we used to have in our BACT determination, and the blue line on the right, they are showing the strikeout and the new language. So the powder coating system actually is a business decision to recover the powder, and is not necessarily a control technology. So right now the language is a powder recovery system with a cyclone followed by a baghouse or cartridge or filter, HEPA filters. So it is mainly used, this powder recovery system is mainly used to save the powder. And additionally, powder recovery system do not necessarily have the cyclone. So the way it is written right now looks like that it has to have a powder recovery system that is, which includes a cyclone, followed a baghouse or cartridge filters or HEPA filters. So we rewarded to not give the impression that the powder recovery system and installing a baghouse is more, we don't want to give this impression this is required, and the baghouse is more effective in controlling the PM emissions comparing to the cyclone. And as we discussed last time in our SRC meeting, there are a lot of facilities actually they're using this the baghouse as a cost-effectiveness method. So this modification is a result of our extensive time we've spent with our engineering and permitting staff to make sure it is clear for both applicants and also for the permitting staff what is requirement to comply with BACT. So right now the baghouse, cartridge, and HEPA filters are all still permissible, and we're just removing powder recovery system with the cyclone to just give the opportunity to the business if they want to have it or they have option to include it. Next slide, please. 36, printing graphic arts. So one of the changes we did here is that since the thermal oxidizer right now is a more general term compared to afterburner, and we have the BACT determination in Part D, so we are proposing to change afterburner to thermal oxidizer to kind of clarify for the applicants when they are looking for the BACT determination for this control technology. And also we replaced compliance with South Coast AQMD Rule 1147 with the thermal oxidizer BACT requirements for NOx. Again, because right now we have this BACT determination. We added back in 2019. So we want the staff, permitting staff or applicant, just make it easier for them to just refer to that BACT determination and just look at it. And because also our BACT determination right now is more stringent than the rule for NOx limit. And in addition, we added compliance with thermal oxidizer BACT requirements to CO requirements because according to the last determination that Al mentioned for Fender guitar, we have the CO requirements of 400 ppm for CO. And in addition, we are going to replace control with alternatively for flexographic. And this is for clarification purpose to show that the facility has two options. One is using compliant material, or alternatively, they can use an add-on technology. And the wording on the right, I just showed that we crossed out the control, we added the alternatively as a replacement, as well as changing the afterburner to thermal oxidizer. Next slide, Tony, please. (37) again is the printing graphic arts. So we remove the control listing and include existing requirement for oven vented to thermal oxidizer. So this is kind of, again, the same thing, just changing it, the control to alternatively. And also here, I need to mention that in the last revision, I crossed out oil-based. We had some discussion with our internal staff, but finally we decided to do not remove that because as you know, the heats that they're all the heats that are oil-based. So we thought that if you remove it, it may make a confusion because when they read the wording, it seems that the facility have they have to have the UV curable inks, which is not what our intention is. So it is an option for them. So we decided to do not remove oil base, and in the revision that you may download last week, still it shows crossed out, but we corrected, and we are going to also correct it in our other, the back determination, to just make sure that it is still there. We are not going to remove it. And those underline you see, actually they used to be in the table. The only thing I did, it was two different rows, one of them for the first technology, the second one was the control, or alternatively, we just merged them to the same row. So nothing have been changed. Next one, please. 38. This is about the spray booth. So as you know, we have different types of spray booth application in addition to automotive, and they are listed there. So instead of using the term automotive type, which has been used to describe fully enclosed spray booth, we are going to change it to fully enclosed to kind of generalize this definition. And also, we are going to include Rule 1147 requirements for NOx if makeup, air, or heater is used for all subcategories. And for the super compliant material, we are going to replace less than 5% VOC by weight with a new language, which is 50 grams or less of VOC per liter of material. And this is based on Rule 109, Part B6. So again, it is just being consistent with the rule language. Next slide, please. All right, and the last change in Part D, this is mostly because of adding that a new back determination for thermal oxidizer RTO for Fender guitar. So we added a new row to include RTO with a 3 ppm NOx and 400 ppm CO limit. Again, we mentioned here burner emissions only. And we changed the title to just make sure that this category includes all the different type of thermal oxidizer and catalytic oxidizer. But for now, we only have particular determination for CO, for RTO. For the rest of them, we just merge everything under other types, and they only have the NOx limit for now. That's all about thermal oxidizer, and I believe that's all about Part D.
Yeah, slide 40, Tony, please. Thank you. Once again, as our commitment to the Station Resource Committee to continue to monitor existing and new organic and food waste digestion projects, we are continue to look at that. In fact, we are we're signed up to receive our Cal Recycle announcements, and I believe they recently hosted a SB 1383 Model 2 webinar, which was intended to educate and provide outreach to adequately resource and implement the programs that are required under SB 1383 for all the facilities that will be subject to that law. We meet periodically with our engineering and try to find out where we are as far as permitting. And I can tell you the latest update we've gotten is that not many new food waste projects with flares are at this time. Most of the food waste related applications we received fall into the categories of receiving food waste and creating a slurry for offsite use or for composting. That we know of, Orange County Sanitation District Plant 2 in Huntington Beach did apply for and received permits just this month to add a food waste storage tanks to their sewage treatment plant facility. So the industry is slowly moving to comply with this Senate bill, and we're monitoring that and to see what impacts, if any, the biogas that's generated by food waste would have on the flares. And by that I mean whether the anticipated generation of ammonia is going to impact the flares NOx limits to comply with the BACT NOx limits for the flares. Next slide. And now next slide, Tony. We have as we're always asked to talk about what's the latest going on with AB 617. Well, we continue to work with CARB on our biweekly meetings in the development of the technology clearinghouse, the BACT clearinghouse, and also BART. Our rules staff attends those meetings. We work with staff and with CARB providing our determinations, our information. And rather than me, I don't know, Pippin, Paul, do you guys want to break the news about your recent update to the online website, or should I say?
I was going to say, put us on the spot. Yeah, I think that's great.
I want you guys to give the news.
Yeah, great. Yeah, we're very excited that we did make the BACT tool live today. It's been password protected while we're kind of finalizing the last little bits. But that is currently, as of this morning, we have made that tool live and it's currently available.
Great, thanks. And as many of you would see, it's I believe is very good, user friendly. It's a one-stop shop to get information on BACT for different districts in California, and it's continued to be updated. It's going to have rules. They're working on the rules that apply to BART. And that's the next stage. I think looking at that towards the winter. I think later on this year to have that up. So,
yeah, we do have some rules up now, but it's fairly limited, and we're looking at a much better version of that we're be hopefully rolling out end of this year, early next year kind of thing.
Great, thank you. Next slide. And with that, next steps. Well, after today, we're putting together a board package that we were planning on going to the December Station Resource Committee. However, there is no Station Resource Committee in December. So we are moving it to the January Station Resource Committee, where we'll be presenting our proposed updates to the guidelines and then taking the board package to the February governing board meeting for approval. At that point, between now and then, and even after that time, we're always welcome comments from the SRC committee members, from the stakeholders, from the general public. If you feel there's something in the guidelines that needs attention, you feel we should take a look at to make it more clear, a new technology we should review, please, by all means, contact us. That's what we're here for. We're along with our own initiative. We reach out to our internal staff, to other air districts, in California, and even across the country, to see what's the latest in LAER and in BACT. So try to continue to keep this process going and update the guidelines as a living document that continually changes as new technology is deployed and achieved in practice. And with that, at this point, looks like we're at almost the 4 o'clock time slot. Open it for public comments. Anybody like to have any comments right now? So Tony, Dave, do you guys see anybody? I don't see anybody with their raised hand, or everyone wants to go home now. Okay, no.
Anybody?
Okay, great, thanks. Naveen, you want any words or?
No, I want to thank everybody, especially the committee, for providing their feedback, and Al and Bahare, good job in finishing this on a timely manner.
Thank you. I was worried about it. Thanks again. I mean, again, thank you for all your assistance. As you can see throughout this process, you provide us with good comments that for us to make our proposed determinations more clear. And with your help, we're achieving that. So thanks again. And with that, we're at the end, and we'll start early next year, the next process of updating the guidelines in between then and now. Have a good time. Stay safe, and thanks again.
Thanks, Al.
Thank you, Al. Thanks, Bahar.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Good
Al.
seeing
Thanks,
everybody.
Bahar.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, thank you.
Good job, Al, in Bahima.
What about me? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Mill.